Hey there, Saberfan Shamim here. You've got questions, I've got answers. Welcome to my second Q&A session. Let's get this party started. Jeffrey asks, what is your favorite Saber model to install and what is your least favorite model to install? Favorite is probably any Saberforge hilt because I'm so familiar with their internal assembly and I've done so many of them over the years that I can pretty much do them in my sleep now. And I'm lazy, so I love doing things that are easy. Least favorite is probably cross guards. 3 times as much work. Justin asks, have you ever thought of doing another boot up sound package in the future? Well, seeing as how the current one has about 600 boot up sounds, I'm not in any hurry to do another one anytime soon. Glenn asks, how in the world do you deal with a-hole clients? I'll be honest, I've been extremely fortunate and lucky when it comes to my customers. 99.99% of them have been a joy to work with. They've been respectful, they've been easy to communicate with, they haven't been a pain in the butt, and they've been very understanding and patient. And honestly, it's just been a pleasure doing business with the vast majority of them. And I know that that makes me pretty lucky and fortunate, and I'm grateful for the customers that I do have. If I had to give advice on how to deal with a customer that I'd rather not deal with, or a customer who is making unreasonable requests or demands, or who is disrespectful, then I would probably say know where your limits are and know for yourself how desperate, for lack of a better word, you are to do commissions. Figure out where your line is and decide, I'm willing to put up with so much before I'm like, I'm just not interested in taking on this commission. And then if you get to that point with a customer, communicate that to them as respectfully but firmly as you can, and be like, I don't think it's going to work out. If you've taken any money or parts from them, refund that, give that back. And if they go ahead and they badmouth you on the groups, chalk that up to a loss. And sometimes you have to eat some losses. That's part of any kind of business, no matter how big or small it is. But again, I've been extremely fortunate when it comes to my own customers. And I'm very grateful for those who have commissioned me to do any kind of work for them. Benji asks your thoughts on open source soundboards. With NeoPixel and Smooth Swing. Okay, so many of you have asked about NeoPixels, my opinion on NeoPixels, as well as now my opinion on open source soundboards like Profi, like Teensy. Each by itself hasn't really piqued my interest. NeoPixel was a thing by itself for a bit, and it was being used with Prisms and with Sparks and Nanobiscottis, and it was a neat feature. It was a neat blade. You could get some really cool effects with it, but it wasn't getting there for me. And then I started hearing about this Smooth Swing thing that was happening, Teensy boards, this open source soundboards, and then there are Profis that are coming out. So I started looking into those, and those started looking really, really cool. And it wasn't until I really saw the two of them together, NeoPixel with Smooth Swing, that the two of those together really just cemented it for me and made it a really, really cool thing, and something that I'm incredibly excited about. That's just the coolest thing ever. So again, I don't think I would ever install a NeoPixel on like a Prism, and I don't think I would ever do an open source with a Tricree. I think the two of them married together is what really makes the experience something special. The coolest new feature that Profi boards have is Smooth Swing, undoubtedly, for me personally. I feel like Smooth Swing is the most revolutionary new feature to be added to custom sabers, period. Flash on Clash was great. Getting the soundboards themselves were great. Motion sensing was great. Clashing, RGB. All of these things have been really, really cool. But I feel like the motion and the sound of a lightsaber is so iconic that when a board was finally able to mimic that much more realistically than we've been able to do so up until now, that is revolutionary to me personally. And so I feel that Smooth Swing is the coolest new feature that open source boards like Profi and Teensy offer, and I look forward to the more established soundboards like Nigon and Plector and a few others, hopefully adopting Smooth Swing into their, next generation boards, going forward. I think that would be really, really cool. Open source boards have a lot of pros and cons. Same with the non-open source, more established brands like Nigon and Plector. Open source boards are incredibly daunting to configure. I've spent hours looking at online tutorials and reading through forum threads, and there's still so much that I don't understand because my knowledge of coding, computer coding, that kind of language is very limited. For those who are trained in such coding language, I'm sure that they'd be able to pick up Profi a lot more quickly than I have been. So I miss the user friendliness of Plector boards, of Nigon boards, that I'm very comfortable and familiar with. But I feel like Smooth Swing, at least for now, is enough of a draw for me to want to delve into the world of open source boards and learn how to use them until such time as hopefully the more established boards start implementing Smooth Swing into their own existing soundboards. So then you can have the cool new feature of Smooth Swing with the more user friendliness of Plector and Nigon boards and more established boards, Electrum, those kinds of boards. Another thing that's really cool about open source boards is that if you know the coding, the sky's the limit, pretty much. You can code the board to do pretty much anything you want, and that's not something that you can really do, even with the top tier boards with Plector or with Nigon. Like, you can't program an igniter, for example, to do anything. You can't program a Crystal Focus to do anything. You can pretty much program a Profi board to do anything, but again, the entry levelness of that is you need to know the coding. You need to know how to be able to code it. You can't just set a parameter, set everything to 100 and then you have everything. You can't just do that. You have to code everything that you want it to do. So if you can't do that yourself, or you can't find someone who's willing to code that new feature for you, you're kind of out of luck. But the open source board means that there's an incredibly rich community that are all helping each other out and that are learning how to do different kinds of code. And someone will come in and be like, hey, how do I make the board do this? And then other people who are really good in code will be like, well, you could try X, Y, and Z and, copy paste this and try that. And there's a lot of back and forth that I like that's going on in the open source board community. Zach asks, what did you do for a living before making custom sabers? I used to work at a Baha'i conference center in Michigan, and I did that for a few years. And then after that, I came home to Minnesota and just had a couple retail jobs here and there while I was figuring out what I wanted to do for grad school. But in the midst of that process, I fell into the world of custom sabers and haven't really looked back since, because that has been my life for almost the past 5 years. Josh asks, what's your favorite saber that you've worked on? And would you ever consider doing a Harry Potter themed saber? Honestly, Brokeflex lightsabers, the broken Graflex from episode 8, those have been tremendous fun to work on. It's probably something sick and wrong with me that I enjoy breaking Graflexes apart. But the weathering aspect of that, it's such a unique style of weathering to make something look as if it has exploded from the inside out, and getting all the weathering right, and then being able to do the exposed crystal chambers and getting all the little wires and support structures and rods and things going off and making it look like it exploded. I really enjoy doing those, so I hope to be able to do a few more Brokeflex commissions in the future. And actually, here's a little sneak peek. Here's a little sneak peek for you guys. So yeah, that full reveal is coming soon. And as for doing a Harry Potter saber, I love Harry Potter, and I would definitely be open to doing a Harry Potter themed saber. Difficulty is that the most iconic weapon or tool from the Harry Potter series is a wand, and that is so much slimmer and thinner than the lightsabers that we make. It would be difficult to do a wand-inspired hilt, so it may be cool to do like a Hogwarts-inspired full hilt, or take the design iconography of a wand and try and translate that into a lightsaber, or just to do like a regular lightsaber with a bunch of Harry Potter images and iconography, Deathly Hallows symbol, for example, etched onto the hilt. That might be an option. But apart from just the saber itself, doing a custom saber, I've already made a custom sound font inspired by the sound effects of magic in Harry Potter films, which is called Wizard, so you can check that out at saberfont.com. Matthew asks, are you a fan of Marvel movies? Does this answer your question? Jeremy asks, what is the weirdest sound font that you've ever been asked to try and make? There have been some really silly ones. Think like SpongeBob, Rick and Morty, those kinds of things. But I usually pass on those kinds of, weird and silly sound font requests, unless it's a franchise or an idea or a subject that I have some kind of personal investment in or attachment to. Think the Porg sound font. Casey asks, ever consider making Dryden Voss or Enfy's Nest weapons? Yeah, no, I have no interest in making any of those, sorry. Michael asks, have you tried playing with the Blade style editor on the Profi site yet? Only a little bit so far. There's still so much for me to experiment with. Ben asks, do you think you'll ever do a Stormbreaker themed saber to pair up with your Infinity saber? Unlikely, sorry. Dwayne asks, what are your hopes to see in episode 9? I want to see Force Ghost Luke, and I want to see an emotionally fulfilling and satisfying conclusion for Princess Leia's story. And I want to see cool lightsaber battles. Michael asks, how old are you? I'm 30. Derek asks, are you going to be purchasing the new Korbanth prequel hilts? I already did, all 3 of them. And honestly, why would I not? Those 3 are some of my favorite saber designs. You've got Episode 3, Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is my all-time favorite saber design, made by 89 Sabers, a designer that I love. Both his internal design aesthetic as well as his exterior attention to detail and quality. Then you've got the Episode 2 Anakin, which is a fantastic design. It's been one of my favorites for years and years, and there have been precious few versions of it available to the public. The Tusken Slayer by Waters Junkyard sold out very quickly, and I've installed 1 or 2 of those, and those are really great, but I look forward to seeing the Korbanth version. I don't think that one's done by 89 Sabers. It's by a different manufacturer. Not Parks, though. Thank the maker. So I look forward to seeing that one. And then you get the skinny Revenge of the Sith Anakin saber, which is one of my favorites. And I, of course, have ordered all 4 of the Anakin Revenge of the Sith hilts that are coming out, late last year and early and into this year. You've got Wonderful Sabers, which I reviewed. The Ultimate Works Pack Store, which I've also reviewed. This Korbanth one, designed by 89 Sabers, that's coming out. And then there's also the 7 Chambers one, which I've pre-ordered. So I look forward to reviewing and comparing all 4 of those. Brent says, I am Isildur's heir. Fight for me, and I will hold your oaths fulfilled. What say you? For those who have played the video game adaptation of that. I yield! What say you? I yield! Daniel asks, are you still planning your vintage Graflex build? I can't wait to see it. Absolutely! Ethan asks, do you think you will ever sell the V6 chassis that you've modded for the Graflex? I cannot remember specifically what V6 chassis modded for the Graflex you're referring to. But seeing as how the V6 chassis is designed and made by Custom Saber Shop, I probably would not just buy it and then mod it and then resell it. Ethan also asks, what lightsaber greebly tool or tech do you wish existed but doesn't, aside from a real lightsaber? This might be cheating a little bit, but I would love to see an extendable, retractable blade without compromising the proportions of the hilt. So that kind of is like a real lightsaber, but I wouldn't be, upset if the blade actually didn't, cut through stuff like a plasma laser. Christian asks, apart from Star Wars, what other fandoms are you a part of? It's funny, you'd think that Star Wars would be my favorite fandom, seeing as how I work building custom lightsabers. But Lord of the Rings is actually my all-time favorite fandom. And I also love Harry Potter, Doctor Who, Battlestar Galactica, Firefly, Serenity, tons of anime, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and its sequel, The Legend of Korra. Not as good, but still flawless. I love video games like Legend of Zelda, Nintendo video games, and Downton Abbey. Justin asks, what saber fighting form do you use? I primarily use Form 2, Makashi. Gregory asks, how do you balance work, family, and your awesome saber smithing? Very poorly. Michael asks, what effects are you liking on the new open source soundboards that they've released now in the market, such as Profi and Teensy? I already kind of mentioned this, but Smooth Swing I still feel is the most revolutionary new feature to be added to custom sabers, and the fact that the open source soundboards are currently the only ones, as far as I'm aware, that support Smooth Swing, that's kind of where I'm focusing a lot of my attention on right now. John asks, what are your top 5 all-time favorite sabers you've ever owned or worked on? Sauron's Wrath, the Infinity lightsaber, my limited edition Master Replicas 1-to-1 scale Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith lightsaber hilt, and a vintage Graflex. Justin asks, how would you lead the Jedi Council? Bold of you to assume I'd be a Jedi! No, but if I was leading the Jedi Council, I would listen to all the other members' advice. I would weigh their words and their sentiments against my own reading of the will of the Force, and then I would make a decision. Max asks, besides the Episode 3 Obi-Wan Kenobi saber, what other saber designs do you love or hate from the prequel era? Honestly, I really like most of the prequel hilts. It's really just the Episode 1/Episode 2 Obi-Wan Kenobi hilt that I absolutely hate. And even on that hilt, it's really just the pommel that I loathe. The rest of the hilt is fine, is great, so yeah. John asks, can I still hug you? Heck yeah! Michael asks, will there be a State of the Saber community address again this year? Most likely. Sebastian asks, are there any hopes for a Mark Hamill Joker sound font? Probably not. Sorry. Justin asks, if you were to spend time with Obi-Wan Kenobi, what would you do with him? I'd probably just say hi to him over and over again so that he'd be forced to respond with, hello there. Ron asks, how many sabers do you have in your collection? And how does this hobby work with your family? His wife apparently hates Star Wars, but he and his child love it. So how does that work in my family? I own several dozen sabers, but most of them are in various states of either being customized, repaired, upgraded, and so like actual finished hilts that like I could show off now, maybe a dozen or so. Fortunately, both of my parents are very supportive of me and the work that I'm doing in the custom saber community. My brothers are both supportive of it. My mom and my brothers enjoy Star Wars, and, you know, they like it fine, and my dad, you know, I think has seen some of the movies, and he likes it. So that's my current family. I'm not married right now, but if and when I ever find a wife, it's not essential to me that she loves Star Wars or is passionate about Star Wars or is even passionate about the same things that I'm passionate about. What's more important to me is that, you know, my future wife recognizes and understands that these are things that I'm passionate about and supports me in, you know, me following my passions in the same way that I would hope to be able to support her and encourage her in pursuing her own passions, even if it's things that I myself am not, you know, super interested in. The fact that she's interested in it is kind of what is, you know, is important to me, if that makes sense. Justin asks, if you were to script a new Star Wars movie, what would you put in it? Well, I'm not gonna think about like scripting a new Star Wars movie within the current canon, because there's a lot about the old expanded universe canon that I still really love and hold dear. One of the biggest aspects of that is how Luke goes and forms the new Jedi Order and becomes the Grand Master of this new Jedi Council. Some of my favorite scenes in all of Star Wars are the internal politics of the Jedi Council. So if I were to ever, you know, be writing a Star Wars film, it would be, you know, pre-Episode 7, and it would sort of be in a different chronology, and it would include some aspect of Luke as the Grand Master of the Jedi Council, leading all the other council members as they kind of bicker amongst themselves and debate the finer points of the will of the Force. Andrew asks, do you have a ballpark guess as to when you'd start taking commissions again? Soon. Hopefully in the next month or so. Ronald asks, what is your guilty pleasure? I honestly don't know if I have a guilty pleasure because I'm pretty open and forthcoming with the things that I, you know, enjoy and take pleasure in. Joshua asks, is there an Ultra Sabers hilt that you like? Okay. With a lot of modding and customizations, the Prophecy could pass for a decent hilt design. I just really don't care for any of their design aesthetics, honestly. Nick asks, other than the Obi-Wan Episode 1 hilt, what's a saber design that you just hate more than Anakin hates sand? I love that everyone knows that I hate the Episode 1 Obi-Wan hilt. I just love that. I'd have to say the Stunt Flex from Episode 8 is the stunt version of the Graflex that Rey uses in most of her training and fight scenes. I just hate those grips, they're so ugly. But that's not really an official saber, so I'd have to say the Rebels solo version of Darth Maul's lightsaber. That giant claw that's as long as the hilt, it's just, there's nothing aesthetically about that saber that I like. Which I know will come to a shock to a lot of you because a lot of you really like that hilt, but I can't stand it. It's just ugly, in my opinion. Sorry. Justin asks, what are your thoughts on the new Vader fan film that was just released on YouTube? It was quite cool overall. I really enjoyed it. There was some clunky dialogue. There was a lot of extra dialogue. You know, Vader and Palpatine, I don't feel would be as verbose as they were in some of the scenes in that film. And some of the set decorating left a little to be desired in the throne room. But overall, I thought it was really, really well done. And special shout out to my boy Christian Gale, who worked on some of the visual effects of that film. Yeah, buddy! Christopher asks, if you could sit down and have dinner with any actor or actress from the Star Wars franchise, who would it be and why? Easy, Mark Hamill. He's just such a fun and genuine human being. I feel like it would be a joy to just sit at a dinner table and listen to him talk and tell stories. I love watching interviews of him where he's just such a dry wit and just such a fun way of talking. He's got a great voice and he has a lot of cool stories. I'd love to sit down and you know, would that I could spend minutes in his company. Joshua asks, what kinds of sabers do you prefer to work on? Your custom personal sabers or movie replica installs? I honestly enjoy both, but I get particularly excited about doing an install if it's a project that I have some kind of emotional or nostalgic connection to, whether that's a custom design that I'm excited about doing for myself or for someone else, or whether it's a movie hilt or a video game hilt for a character or a scene or something that I have some kind of emotional attachment to. Joel asks, is there any old saber technology which you prefer to use or install over the new technologies that are currently in the market? I still primarily do Tri-Cree installs over NeoPixel builds, even though that it seems to be the direction that a lot of the community is moving towards NeoPixels. And as I mentioned earlier, I am seeing a lot more of the virtues of NeoPixels, and I probably will start offering my own NeoPixel installs going into the future. But for now, I still primarily do Tri-Cree installs. Blake asks, would it be better for a customer to send in the parts for a commission, or would it be better for you to order everything yourself, or does it depend on the nature of the build? Generally, the customer will send me an empty saber hilt, and then I will order and install all the electronics and additional parts that are needed to complete the build, minus the blade. I don't stock blades. Because there's so many different kinds of blades from so many different kinds of manufacturers, it would not be feasible for me to be able to stock blades and have them ready to ship out with completed commissions. So blades are on the customer to provide for themselves from whatever manufacturer they personally prefer. Occasionally, I will also provide the empty hilt. This is especially true for some international customers, where it doesn't make sense for them to spend all that shipping to send me an empty hilt. It's much more economic for me to order the empty hilt from the United States, if it's a hilt that's in the United States, and then have it delivered directly to me, and then I'll also provide the electronics. But I don't do that very often. It's very rare for a customer to send me additional components or electronics in addition to an empty hilt. And I generally prefer to be able to provide my own electronics. Brent asks, will you be going to Celebration this year? Hell yeah! Thomas asks, if you were asked to create Rey's Episode 9 lightsaber, what kind of saber would you design for her? Honestly, I would like to see the Graflex retired in Episode 9. As much as I love it, I don't want to see her walking around with either a reforged Graflex or, parts of the Graflex kind of scrap built together into a new hilt using elements of the Graflex. I'm fine if she wants to take the crystal from the Graflex and use that in a new hilt, but I want her hilt to be brand new. I want her to be able to build a new lightsaber using the books that she stole from the tree, in the same way that Luke built a totally new lightsaber. He didn't, obviously his lightsaber was lost in Episode 5, so he couldn't reuse any of those parts, but I like the fact that Luke was able to build a brand new lightsaber. I believe the canon explanation is that he went back into Old Ben's hut and found some instruction manuals or something, and possibly Qui-Gon's crystal. I don't know if that's old canon, new canon, or just a theory, but I think that's cool because I love Qui-Gon. It's the only green lightsaber ever to exist, but it would make sense for Obi-Wan to have it because it was his master's his master's hilt. So it would make sense for that green lightsaber to exist in Obi-Wan's hut somewhere, and for Luke to find the green crystal. One other quick note about the Graflex, I would love to see it memorialized in some way by the Resistance and by the Jedi. Similar to how, the shards of Narsil are placed in reverence in the halls of Rivendell in the Lord of the Rings films. I know that the Narsil shards eventually get reforged into Anduril, and I don't want the Graflex to be reforged or come back to life. That's fine. But I would love to see the Graflex shards of it kind of memorialized, because it's not only the start of the new Rebel Alliance, it's also the culmination of the Skywalker legacy, and we know that Episode 9 is going to be the culmination of the Skywalker legacy in the films. So I think it would be cool to pay some kind of homage to the Graflex and have it, you know, lying in state, as it were. But yeah, I would love to see a totally unique lightsaber design, and as far as the hilt and blade color, I would love for it to be a color that we haven't seen on screen in the movies yet. I would love yellow or amber, you know, like a golden orange. I would love that for Rey. I think that would be really cool. And I think I'd want it just to be a single hilt. I don't want to see her do a staff or two-sided lightsaber or anything, or a pike, or I don't want to see anything weird. Just a single orange or yellow lightsaber. That'd be really cool, in my opinion. James asks, as someone who wants to get into this hobby for their own installs, is there something you would recommend to practice your soldering skills on without worrying about ruining an expensive soundboard? If you Google search PCB breadboards, you can get them for, you know, just a couple bucks online or at some local stores. And it's just a, you know, rectangle of PCB with a bunch of blank solder pads on there. So that's where I would recommend practicing your soldering. Justin asks, how good are you when it comes to saber combat? How do you train, and how does one improve in skills if there's nobody around you to help you get better? Well, I know I mentioned earlier that my primary dueling form is Makashi Form 2, but I actually don't do as much dueling as I used to these days. It's been several years since I've really gone out and, you know, fought with people out in the park. But if you're looking at doing more kind of intense saber combat training, if you're not already, I would recommend getting involved with the Saber Legion. If there isn't a local charter with you, I still recommend joining their online Facebook group and at least connecting with people who are part of larger communities, but also people on there who are isolated like you might be. And then you guys can talk and consult and learn from each other and support each other as you know, work to train and learn how to do saber combat in an isolated area. It also might be a cool opportunity for you to start your own local TSL charter, if that's something that you might be interested in doing. So go check out the TSL group on Facebook. Andreas asks, what is the difference between a Profi board and a Prism, and which is best? Honestly, there really is no best when it comes to soundboards. It's all down to what features you want in your saber and how much you're willing to pay for that saber. So there's pros and cons to Profi, there's pros and cons to Prism, there's pros and cons to every other kind of soundboard on the market. There is no one best soundboard. It's all down to what you want and what you want to spend. Scott asks, if you could have one saber back that you built and sold to keep forever, which one would it be? That would be this guy, the Frostbite. Hell yeah! Joshua asks, what type of collaboration projects interest you, and do you have any planned for this year? If so, what details can you share? In general, I really like doing collaborations with people who have skills that I don't have, and vice versa. So like doing a collaboration on an install without anything special on the hilt, where like the person knows how to do electronics and I know how to do electronics, like that's not a fun collaboration for me, because we both share the same set of skills and there's nothing unique. Like I could have done that by myself, or that other person could have done that by themselves. So there's nothing unique about it. Most of the collaborations that I've done in the past have involved some kind of acid etching, which is a skill that I don't have, and I probably won't ever be picking up for myself. So yeah, I do have a couple acid-etched collaborations planned for this year. One of them involves a sister saber to the Sauron's Wrath hilt that I have, and it'll sort of be a Saruman-inspired hilt design, again using a Vader's Vault Wrath, so that I can have two Wraths together, and then side by side they will be the two towers. Carl asks, it seems like the hobby is on the cusp of a major shift, not only with the NeoPixels becoming extremely popular, but also with the advent of open source and smooth swing. I know you're not a fan of NeoPixel until recently and have now been converted, but I would like to hear your thoughts on what the future holds for this community. As I've mentioned before in this video, smooth swing is the bee's knees, and I think that every major soundboard manufacturer is going to be adopting smooth swing at some point in the future. If they don't, I feel like they'll just be left in the dust, because smooth swing is such an amazingly cool feature. In addition to that, I'd also love to see most soundboards include some kind of built-in ability to adjust your settings and parameters without having to remove an SD card. I know that there are some soundboards on there, out there that, you know, you can adjust settings via micro USB. Some soundboards you can do via Bluetooth. You know, there's the Rice port that you can wire in as an optional thing for a lot of Plector boards, but I'd love to see that just become a standard feature, either Bluetooth or micro USB, so you can just plug it in, not have to remove anything. You just plug it in, make the adjustments, and then unplug it and you're good to go. That, I think, plus Smooth Swing would be great. And then also, one of the cool things about open source is that you can just continually update the firmware using the micro USB. I'd love to see, you know, next generation Plector boards, next generation NEC boards, and the whole rest of them incorporate some kind of user update feature, so that anytime a new firmware comes out, you don't have to desolder your current soundboard, send it into someone, and have it, you know, flashed with a new firmware, or even, God forbid, you have to completely replace the physical soundboard itself with a brand new version. That's been the kind of the way that you've had to do it for the last 10 years or so. But now with open source and that kind of methodology being adopted into soundboards going forward, I think that'd be really, really cool. Christian asks, where do you see yourself going in the future of the hobby? Like getting your own shop and building your own sabers fully? If so, I totally come and work for you, boo-boo. That was Christian Gale, by the way. And no, I'm comfortable in my niche, and I don't really see myself expanding beyond, you know, what I'm doing. So... sorry, boo-boo. Michael asks, do you have any experience with Saber Trio? If so, what's your opinion on the company and their products? I honestly don't have a lot of experience with Saber Trio. I've seen some of their hilts online. They look really, really nice. I've seen one of their chassis in person, and it was very clean and well installed. And I own a secondhand Vulcan from Saber Trio. I plan eventually to send it off to Ryan Lannon and do some kind of Lord of the Rings dwarvish etch on it. Oh, I've got some plans. It's going to be good. Raymond asks, do you work full-time as a sabersmith? Yes. Do you have health insurance? Yes. Can you afford health insurance? Well, seeing as how I have it, yes. Andrew asks, are you sold on Profi board? I'm sold enough to start installing Profi on some of my own personal sabers, and sold enough to start accepting Profi/NeoPixel commissions in the very near future. Nick asks, what are your thoughts on power converters? I'd love to pick up a couple of them in Tashi Station. Benji asks, do you see yourself losing interest in the hobby after installing so many sabers and owning so many different hilts? Well, I certainly hope that I never lose my interest in this hobby. I love it a lot. And I love so many of the people that I've met, both online and in person. I can definitely see my involvement, you know, waxing and waning from time to time. But I don't think I'll ever get to a point where I'll want to, like, leave the community. Clint asks, how often do you find that new soundboards you plan to use in installs have suffered damage? Honestly, very, very, very infrequently have I ever received an NEC board or a Plector board that has been defective in any way. More often than not, it's an SD card that is defective. That's the most, you know, the most frequent thing that comes to me defective. That, and then a recharge port. Those are the two things that really are defective more frequently for me than soundboards. Clint also asks, how many NeoPixel strips have you received that did not work as expected? Well, I actually have never built my own NeoPixel blade, and so I've never really ordered any NeoPixels, you know, just by themselves. Though I have heard that a lot of people have ordered their own and, you know, it doesn't work out the way that it does. And that's kind of one of the reasons that I wasn't into the whole NeoPixel thing myself, because back in the day, there was no manufacturer of NeoPixel blades. You had to buy the strips and build the blades yourselves. And if your NeoPixel strip was bad, then, you know, kind of out of luck. But now that Vader's Vault is offering their own ready-made NeoPixel blades, then I don't have to worry about where do I buy the best NeoPixel strips and how do I spend the time and the effort and the resources to build my own blades. I don't have time for that. A lot of people do, and that's great. Bully to them. They can, you know, spend less money, but I'm perfectly fine paying for someone to do that particular skill. I feel like it's a collaboration, you know? I don't want to learn how to do acid etching. You know, that's just not something I want to do. I don't want to learn how to build my own NeoPixel blade. So I'm perfectly fine paying someone to do the acid etch portion of a build. I'm perfectly fine paying someone to do the NeoPixel build, the blade of a commission. And Clint's third question is, oh, have you ever considered holding a clinic or instruction class on how to do installs, such as at TSL meets or at other conventions? Oh god, no, nothing so official. I mean, I've recorded, you know, several tutorial videos that I've uploaded here to my YouTube channel where I just set the camera up and I do an install and I talk throughout the whole thing about what I'm doing and how to do it. So there's those. And then locally here as well, every couple of weeks I get together with some of my friends and we build sabers together. We just spend an afternoon in someone's garage or in someone's house and we build, custom sabers together. And so I do a lot of, I share as much of my knowledge and my experience as I can and as people want at those meets. But yeah, no, I probably won't do anything as official as like holding a class. No, sorry. Shane asks, do you have any special projects that you're working on in the coming year? I have a couple. So there's the all vintage Graflex that I will be doing. I mentioned it earlier. It's going to be a static build. The entire thing is going to be completely vintage. I'm super excited about that. I think this is the first time I'm talking about it. I have an Ultimate Works Count Dooku that I've stripped and re-chrome plated, and I'm giving it off to my good friend Andy Harton, who will be doing a gorgeous redwood inlay in place of all the rubber, the black rubber all around the hilt. Oh, it's going to be great. I plan on machining at least a couple more SM hilts, so hopefully the SM3, God willing, the SM4 as well. And then I also have planned a 2019 version of the Gold Flex, an entire Graflex hilt plated in 24 karat gold. It's going to be the bee's knees. Mike asks, do you have any thoughts or hopes for Rey's and Kylo's lightsabers in episode 9? I've already kind of mentioned that I hope that Rey builds her own unique lightsaber with a unique blade color that's not based on the Graflex. And I don't see any reason that Kylo would move away from his crossguard. Dean asks, what was your favorite day/moment in 2018, Star Wars related or personally? Oh god, there's so many to choose from. But saber related wise, I'd say probably finally finding and owning a limited edition Master Replicas Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 3 hilt. That's been my goal and my dream for the last 5 years, and I finally accomplished it last year. Chris asks, what's your dream saber that can actually be built? I would love to see a Graflex fully decked out with smooth swing and a gorgeous, unique crystal chamber. Jesse asks, do you think Disney should make a Maul movie with his brother Savage? No. Travis asks, what annoys you or do you feel is overrated in the saber world? Honestly, I'm sick and tired of the soundboard fanboys going to war with each other. The newest war is open source versus old school, and I'm sick and tired of that argument. I really am. There's pros and cons to every single soundboard and every single soundboard manufacturer. Try a bunch of them out, see what works for you, more power to you. Also, lit AV switches are ugly as sin, unless there's a damn good aesthetic reason for having one. Jacob asks, not that saber related, but I actually watched your video where you addressed the Jordan Mole situation. Do you think he would ever stand a chance at redeeming himself? No. Full stop. Period. Categorically no. I cannot envision a scenario in which his reputation within the community or with me personally is ever mended in any way. I think he is gone for good, and even if he tried to re-enter the community, even after some time, no. D asks, will you please not tease us with selling the Sauron's Wrath next April Fools? I make no guarantees. Ryan Lennon asks, should we do an Aquaman/Atlantis-themed saber collab together? Hell yeah! By the way, Aquaman was a spectacular movie. Fight me. Jacob asks, has the control box design on the Saberforge Redeemer been updated? Updated since when? I know that it's gone through a few design revisions in the year or so that I worked for them back in like 2014, 2015, but since then I have no idea, and I'm sure that it has undergone some revisions, in the 4 years since then. David asks, we know how much you hate the Obi-Wan Kenobi pommel from episode 1. If you could change that pommel, what it's supposed to look like, what would you choose in terms of, what kind of pommel design is already out there to replace it with? Literally any other pommel would be an improvement. Howard asks, how is the Vader post-Death Star explosion saber coming along? Well, I don't know, I'd say it's coming along pretty nicely, wouldn't you? Zachary asks, what is your opinion on midichlorians, yay or nay? I'm just going to say this once, midichlorians has never, ever bothered me in any way, shape, or form. Ollie asks, what are your thoughts on the new Dark Lord saber from Watto's Junkyard, the Revenge of the Sith Vader hilt? I think it looks great. Watto's Junkyard is a fine saber manufacturer. I love their Tusken Slayer hilt. But I'm not on the Dark Lord run because I just have never been a fan of the Episode 3 Darth Vader hilt design. So that's not a knock against the company that's manufacturing this replica. That's just, I don't like the hilt design from the film and the promotional materials that it came from. So sorry, but if someone has that hilt and it crosses my desk as part of a commission, I will definitely do a review on it that way. JB asks, it's a new year, so what do you think of Christian Gale now? I still hate him.